operation Cosa Nostra.
This is going to be a Cosa Nostra till I die. Be it an hour from now, be it tonight, or 100 years from now when I'm in jail, it's going to be a Cosa Nostra.
Assistant U.S. Attorney Patrick Cotter tells the final report how the tapes prove that Gotti ordered murders. One such crime was the assassination of Gambino soldier Robert DiBernardo, a.k.a. DB.
There was nothing, I think, that matched the moment when the jury actually heard Mr. Gotti say things like, when I killed DB, when I whacked DB.
DB got whacked. I knew why it was being done, and I whacked.
But perhaps the strongest evidence against Gotti comes through the words of one of his own, Gotti's second in command, Sammy the Bull Gravano. March 2nd, Gravano takes the stand. He has agreed to testify about mob secrets in exchange for a reduced sentence and a spot in the witness protection program. It is the first time ever that such a high-level mafia insider has agreed to break the mob's sacred code of omerta, or silence, and testify against his own boss. But after so many earlier Gotti legal victories, why would Gravano now break the mafia oath and turn against Gotti? For 9 days, Sammy the Bull reveals the inside story of the Gambino family's criminal activities. He admits ties to 19 murders. These include the Castellano hit, which he says was ordered by Gotti. Local TV reporter Pablo Guzman is in court and watches the jury's reaction.
This wasn't a guy that they wanted to invite for Thanksgiving dinner. You didn't like this guy. But it was the kind of that thing where you can't really turn away from looking at the train wreck.
On cross-examination, the defense attacks Gravano's credibility. They accuse him of telling lies to avoid prosecution for his murderous past. In light of his previous criminal record, how can the jury trust Gravano's testimony? April 2nd, 1992. After deliberating for less than 2 days, the jury reaches a verdict. For the crimes of murder, racketeering, and conspiracy, the jury finds John Gotti guilty on all counts. After 4 trials and numerous investigations, the Teflon Don is finally headed to prison.
Teflon is gone, the Don is covered with Velcro, and every charge in the indictment stuck. The mob, as we have known it, is on the way out.
Government officials predict John Gotti's trip to prison will be one of many more for the mob. Why is Gotti's conviction a turning point in the fight against Cosa Nostra? For many Gotti champions, including his daughter Victoria, it is difficult to accept the Don's new image, that of convicted felon.
My father is the last of the Mohegans. They don't make men like him anymore, and they never will.
June 23rd, sentencing day. A crowd of nearly 1,000 Gotti supporters gathers outside the courthouse to protest the conviction and demand that he be set free. Inside, a judge sentences him to life in prison without parole. The government hails the sentence as the end of a mighty era for Cosa Nostra. Still, the story of Gotti's rise and fall remains clouded with questions. How did the FBI finally succeed in getting Gotti? The final report now answers those questions, beginning with the mob's chokehold on the Big Apple. For decades, mafia families controlled several major industries throughout the country. The financial impact of this corruption is greatest in New York. How does the mafia affect life in America's largest city? It raises the price of everything, from what New Yorkers eat to where they live and work. The mafia extorts money from small business owners and industry leaders, forcing them to pay fees to the mob just to keep their goods and services flowing. These added expenses are passed on to consumers, costing them hundreds of millions of dollars each year.
If you ordered chicken in New York, the mob got a piece. If you had anything delivered by a truck, the mob got a piece. They had their fingers in a lot of pies.
In the 1980s, the largest and most influential of these mafia families is the Gambinos. Their leader is Paul Castellano.
Castellano ran the family like a Fortune 500 company. He was more of a businessman than your traditional gangster or mobster.
But Castellano is troubled by the behavior of one of his captains, John Gotti. Gotti earned his stripes after assisting with the murder of a rival gangster in a neighborhood bar. mobster soon leads his own mafia crew, but Castellano is leery and views him as a troublemaker.
Gotti represented the rough and tumble street coarse Castellano. He wanted more refined people at the dinner table, and Gotti was the kind of guy that, was wiping his mouth like this.
Even so, the two seem to get along. But in 1985, Gotti has Castellano and Thomas Bellotti killed. Why would Gotti kill his own boss and underboss? Gotti's crew was dealing drugs, which Castellano prohibited. Gotti feared reprisals. 1983. Police record 3 of Gotti's soldiers talking about selling heroin and working for the mob. The recordings lead to the arrest of Angelo Ruggiero, John Carneglia, and Gotti's own brother, Gene. Castellano is furious and demands to hear the tapes.
This is a no-no. You're not supposed to get caught talking about mafia business, and you're not supposed to get caught talking about drugs.
Once Castellano finally gets the tapes, Gotti fears he'll be demoted, or worse. September 1985. Gotti reaches out to 10 of his closest allies, including Sammy the Bull Gravano, to rub out Castellano. 3 months later, Gambino family members loyal to Gotti gunned down Castellano and his underboss in front of a Manhattan steakhouse. Years later, in a television interview, Gravano described how he and Gotti watched the hit from a nearby car.
As soon as Paul opened up the door, I saw them white jackets all surrounding the car. They were shooting Paul. Tommy was actually watching Paul being shot, thinking which direction that he would run, probably, and they came across and shot him in the head.
The audacity of the crime left many observers wondering, why would anyone stage a double murder in such a public place? To make a bold statement to other mobsters and discourage retaliation.
This was somebody's bid for power. If they had kidnapped these guys, shot them, and dumped the bodies somewhere out in, a swamp, it wouldn't have made the play that it did.
By carrying out such a dramatic hit, Gotti put other mobsters on notice. They too can be killed anytime, anywhere. In this way, Gotti hopes to avoid a retaliatory hit. Under a long-standing mob rule, no one can murder a crime family boss without permission from the other Cosa Nostra bosses. After the murders, everyone involved vows to remain silent. Sammy the Bull will later betray this promise when he testifies against Gotti in court.
Master double-crosser. John's a double-crosser. I'm a master double-crosser. We played chess, and he lost.
More on the double dealings of Sammy the Bull Gravano, and more answers to our questions when the final report continues. March 1986. Queens, New York. A confident and stylish John Gotti walks into state court. The new reputed leader of the Gambino crime family is here to stand trial for felony assault. In this case, the victim is Romuald Pajcek. He claims Gotti and an associate beat him up over a parking dispute. When Gotti faces his accuser in court, however, Pajcek claims he has no memory of his attackers. The judge dismisses the case. Why did the victim change his story? It is likely he was threatened. Several days before the trial began, Pajcek tells the detective that his phone is ringing at all hours and that someone cut the brake lines on his van. In a case involving the mob, this is more than enough warning. Pajcek tells investigators he no longer wants to testify and goes into hiding. Prosecutors force him to take the stand, but ultimately, Pajcek's fear of mob retribution prompts him to claim he forgot the identity of his attackers.
The Pajcek case really wasn't a trial. That was the I Forgotti trial.
March 13th, 1987. John Gotti's second trial since becoming boss, this one in federal court, comes to an end. Once again, the mob boss beats the rap. After a 6-month trial, he's acquitted on all charges. Why did the jury find Gotti not guilty? Because the case was fixed. This time, instead of intimidating the key witness, Cosa